welcome to the Pearls and Polish podcast. My name is Rachel and I'm coming to you from just outside Sacramento, California. This is episode 24 and this is the episode that has been a nightmare to record. I'll fill you in a minute. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry, and links to those are on my website in the description below, along with all the makers, designers, yarn dyers that I mentioned in today's episode. If you are new here, welcome. This is my little corner of the internet where I talk about knitting, other little crafty things I'm into, life, books, movies, and if you are coming back, welcome back. This is going to be a longer episode than what I typically try to record. We have a lot to cover, and then you'll also notice that our setup is a little bit different. I am at my parents' house today, so I'm in my sister's old room, and she has this like lime green sherbet color walls all over, so not our typical setup, but welcome. So glad to spend some time with you. So I recorded an episode at the beginning of July, and usually I record 2 episodes a month. The one at the beginning of the month is kind of what had happened in the previous 2 weeks, what is the plans I'm putting together for the whole month, and then we have an episode in the middle of the month of just kind of how those plans are going, what the rest of the month looks like. So I recorded an episode, I think it was like July 4th, and all ready to put on my computer, and I didn't have enough storage space. For some reason, these video files are very large and my computer just can't handle it. So after fighting for like 3 days with my computer, trying to figure it out, decided it was finally time to get an external hard drive. However, at that point, we were just a couple days out from Prime Day, so like, well, I might as well just wait for Prime Day so I can get, a bit of a deal on this hard drive. So it has been a mess. So all that to say, we have a lot of things to cover. In the last part of June and the beginning part of July, I completed 4 sock projects. And I went into great detail talking about it in the episode I recorded. So I'm going to do a little bit of movie magic. I'm going to put in that clip where I talk about the 4 pairs of socks that I had completed, talk about the yarn dyers, the patterns, things I learned. I'm going to insert it here and I will meet you back in just a minute. So these are my cabin retreat socks. The pattern is String of Lights. I almost said Stack of Books. That's a different one. This is String of Lights by the Sock Witchery. She also did Stack of Books, which is a great pattern. So I've done this pattern before. Really love it. It's a broken rib. So it's a rib sock, but you do have some knitting between the pearls, so it just gives it a little extra texture. Now I always knit my socks the same. I always use a 2.5 millimeter needle, Chagu, 32 inches. So that's like a US 1.5. I've tried a 2.25 and it's just a little small for me. So the 2.5 is perfect. So I always use a 2.5 32 inch needle. I always cast on 64 stitches. I always, if I'm doing a long sock, do 20 rows for the cuff, 60 rows for the leg, heel flap and gusset, and I'm usually between like 70 and 80 rows for the foot, and then my toe. I always do the toe the same. So I am a bit of a creature of habit. I love just the way that I've kind of figured out how I like my socks. So the only variations will be like the pattern. There are some exceptions in this pile and we'll talk about those in a second. Anyways, this is, the yarn is from Woolberry, and I know I've talked about it a couple times. They did a cabin retreat, I want to say last year before, and part of that was you got to dye your own yarn. So this was the yarn that I dyed. And I just love how it came out. There's so much texture in the colors, And I'm just super chuffed that I dyed this yarn and then I made my own sock. So this is a completed pair, but I only have 4 sock blockers and I have 4 pairs of socks. So I'm only gonna show you one. But yeah, nothing extra about this. The only difference was not the cable, the needles that I used. I did not use a ChowGoo needle. I used one by Addie. It was a square needle. I talked about it in the last episode, but the whole idea behind a square needle is that it's a little more ergonomically sound because your fingers have edges to hold on to, like a pencil. You know how pencils are edged, so that it's easy on your hands if you have like arthritis or gripping issues. I didn't see much of a difference, to be honest. It was just a little different textured. The cable, you can definitely tell a difference. I really like ChowGoo's cable. It has like a memory wire, so it doesn't kink. It doesn't get really affected by the heat all that much, so I just really like that cable. And the join is a lot smoother than if in the Addie needles, but I liked them, so I'll probably use them again. But that's the first sock. I'm gonna toss that over there. Next sock in my pile is another exception to my rule. This is Hearts on Fire by Hickory Lane. This was a February colorway from either last year or the year before. And I've done several samples for Lisa, so I always really enjoy her colorways. So I had done a sample, I had gotten kind of like my payment I usually get store credit. So I was ready to put in my order. I put in my order, and in her pictures, she put this yarn, and it's, the way that the yarn is spun, it has these pops of black. So that's not dye, that's black yarn. And then you dye it. So you have this like zebra stripe. So she had one of those skeins in her pictures, and I went to look for it in the shop and it wasn't there. So I, messaged her like, hey, where's the zebra stripe yarn? Cause I want that. Come to find out, it was a sample given to her by her yarn supplier. So she just dyed it up for fun and just had it. So she sent it to me. So finally got around to knitting it up. This sock I did toe up. This is the Monday socks from Sarah Opie. She's S-Knits on Instagram. All of this will be tagged in the notes below. But it's a toe up. So you cast on at the bottom, you knit up the foot, and then right here, I don't know how well the camera will pick it up, but there's like right here. So there's like a triangle thing going on. That's a gusset. In a heel flapping gusset, you have this triangle like right here. And that just accounts for space in your heel, right? Your foot isn't like straight up and down. It's not a right angle. There's some triangleage there. That's a technical term, triangleage. So a gusset just helps like make up for that extra space in that heel. So I don't normally do toe up socks because there's no gusset, and I don't like the way the sock stretches over the top of my foot, trying to compensate for just that extra space. But Sarah put out this pattern. I've done it like 4 times where you knit it toe up and you increase right before the heel on the top side, and then you knit your heel and then you decrease and then you just keep going. Her pattern is a vanilla sock, so there's no ribbing. I added the ribbing because I'm also a sucker for a ribbed sock. The other modification I did was the heel itself. So she has a German short row heel, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with a German short row heel. I prefer the Fish Lips Kiss heel by Patty Joy White. She's the sock therapist on Instagram. It was the first heel I'd ever did, and her pattern is $1 on Ravelry, and you get like 16 pages of hows and whys and math and how to figure out where to put your heel and like all the technical stuff of the why, which I love. So it's a great heel. It's really well explained. It's very easy to do. So I highly encourage that heel if you haven't tried a short row heel. So with this pair, not only did I go toe up, not only did I do a short row heel, I also knit these 2 at a time. So if you are on Instagram and you follow me on Instagram, I was posting pictures of me knitting these 2 socks at the same time. So like the abbreviation is TAAT, 2 at a time. So I have both socks on the same needle. So I had a 40-inch needle, and you like knit one side of one sock, you knit one side of this other sock, you turn it around, and then you knit the back side of both socks. I've tried it once before when I was first learning how to knit socks, and that was not the best life choice because I had no idea what I was doing as far as like knitting a sock, and then adding onto this like other technical element as far as like knitting 2 at a time. So now that I've knit quite a few socks since then, it was like time to try it again. And I realized a couple things. One, it felt really slow. I can get through socks rather quickly, and it just felt like it was taking forever. So when I got to the heel, you know, looked at my work and was like, I could have had a full sock done by now. But it was good. It was a good learning experience. The second thing was that, and I chatted with the sock therapist a little bit on Instagram about this, was that if you are knitting 2 at a time, if you like are doing a lace section, the lace is done like all at the same go. So with this gusset, I missed one of the gusset increases. You're supposed to do 6, I only did 5, but because I did my socks at the same time, they were the same. So I didn't have like one with a mistake and one without. So I did appreciate that. The other thing I noticed was that they felt heavy, like the cable felt heavy because I had 2 socks on it. So I got to about here, I did the heel, I did all of my decreases, I knit 20 rounds, and then I quit. I was like, I'm done. I put them on 2 separate needles and I finished it in like a day or 2. So I liked it, mostly. I will try it again. I'll probably try it again with shorty socks just because there isn't like another 60 rounds and a cuff to do. So it probably won't feel as heavy, but definitely something I will try again. That's pair number 2. Pair number 3. These were not in the order that they were completed. Actually, the pair I just showed you were the last ones I completed, but you know, that's okay. My June socks. So I've talked about this quite a bit. This is Pasley Knits Yarn Club for the Gods. That was last year's yarn club. This is the colorway Aphrodite. I did the Rhinebeck Roomies pattern by the Crazy Sock Lady. Nothing changed on this one. 20 rounds for the cuff, 60 rounds for the leg, heel flap and gusset. Between 70 and 80 rounds for the foot and a toe. Nothing special. Great pattern, just enough to like keep you entertained as far as like texture without being overwhelming. So definitely get that one. And then the last one are there's dog hair all over this. The dog laid on top of my socks that were drying. I put them on the floor. And she was annoyed she couldn't sit with my husband, so she laid on top of my knits in protest. And now there's fur all over it. Anyways, these are my vanilla socks, also by Woolberry. This is the Coastal colorway from their road trip scavenger hunt thing from a couple years ago. This is a cashmere base, so it's wool, cashmere, and nylon, so it's a little softer, a little warmer. I couldn't feel the cashmere as much as I have in other cashmere bases. I don't know if it was just the way the yarn was milled or the way it was spun. I couldn't really tell a difference in my hand. I'll probably be able to tell a difference when I'm wearing them, but it's too hot for that. Anyways, this is my vanilla sock. Fun thing about this sock is I wrote the pattern for this. I finally got around to writing a pattern for how I knit my socks. And in it, I've added all of the little like tips and tricks that I've picked up on how I like to knit my socks. So for instance, how I knit in the round magic loop. I add an extra little step in there to kind of close the gap there. How I knit my heel flap and pick up stitches on the side. I do something slightly different than what most patterns will say. My preferred toe, like not everyone knits the toe the same. So I do have a couple really, really nice people who are test knitting it for me just to make sure that everything makes sense. It makes sense in my head because I'm the one who does it and I've knit it so many times, but I really wanted to make it as user-friendly as possible and assume that you have never knit a sock before. Just because, you know, with all special groups, we all have our own little lingo, and if you don't know what a two-tog is, or a K2 tog, then how am I supposed to expect you to be able to do that? So really try to explain as much as possible everything that you need to do, and then with that comes a video tutorial. So I think the testers have like another week or two with the pattern, and then once everything gets finalized and I put the pattern on like a nicer format, I'll release that. You guys will know first, and you can knit a pair of socks with me. So those are my finished items. Okay, we're back. So hope you enjoy that. I have a couple more projects that I finished since recording that. So I'm gonna go a little bit out of order and talk about a couple knit-alongs. You guys know I love knit-alongs. There's just something about knitting either similar patterns or the same patterns or themes with other people from around the world and just having a great time with the knitting community. So right now is Summer Sock Camp. That goes, I believe, through like mid-August. Right now is also Sock Week. This is, I think, second to last day of Sock Week, and that's hosted by Nitty Natty of Love and Stitches. Sock Camp is hosted by Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady, and then it's also the Pip and Pin 6-week sock knit along. So lots of socks are getting knit, and thankfully I can use the same pairs of socks for all 3 of those knit alongs. So I have my little Hobonichi Weeks planner. It's quite small, but it's just helping me keep track of all the things, when knit alongs start, when they stop, what is in progress, what counts for what knit along. So I'll show you what this week's spread looks like. So I'm trying to keep all my notes as far as like what I'm getting done, what goes with which knit along. It's been an experience. I'll let me put my little marker back in here. But all that to say, I am so thankful I have this. Ooh, hold on. There you go. This planner that I've adopted, kind of writing down my knitting plans, because it's definitely helped me stay on track as far as what I'm making, but also just to kind of keep all these things in line versus like trying to just remember or writing it down somewhere or putting it on my phone. So we'll definitely talk more about knitting planning in future episodes, and then for what I have planned for 2024. But let's get back to the knitting. So in the episode that didn't happen, I talked about a vacation that my husband and I went on. We celebrated 11 years of being married, and every year we try and do at least one night away from home. So we obviously live in California, so we've gone all over the coast. We prefer the ocean. In the COVID years, we went to Sacramento, and the whole idea is just to be together for at least a night, away from the house and the kids, and just kind of have a chance to reconnect and just spend time together. So this year we went to Pacific Grove, which is just outside Monterey. We were within walking distance of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and it was just so nice. We had like 60-degree weather, so it was cold, and it was just really it's something I look forward to just spending time with just him and be able to just do nothing. We went to different coffee shops, we had fun food, we went to the movies, and it isn't so much the like where we're going, but it's just like just spending some quality time together, reflecting on the last year, getting ready for the next school year. So that was really great. So while we were in Pacific Grove, I worked on my Kindling Socks. So I'm gonna post a picture here. Since, like I said, I'm at my parents' house, so I didn't want to bring all the socks with me. So the Kindling Socks is by Lindsey Fowler of Larkspur Knits, and you guys know I love Lindsey Fowler's patterns. My all-time favorite is the High Desert Socks. I've knit like 12 of them, 12 pairs. I love this pattern. So when I saw that Lindsey had a fingering weight version, that was obviously the one I had to do. And then the yarn that I used is by Red Stag, I believe it's Red Stag Fibres. It's all linked below. But this was a shop exclusive for the yarn shop in San Diego that we went to over spring break. So this is called Sunset Cliffs. So it just felt kind of appropriate of using a vacation yarn for my vacation knit. So I got most of the sock done in the like 3 days that we were in Pacific Grove. So fun pattern, very easy to follow. In the High Desert Socks, you do have some contrasting colors for stripes and heels, toes, and cuffs. In this one, you didn't necessarily have to do that. The striping band that you would use with a contrasting color was actually a garter stitch band, which was wonderful. Nice little texture there. But what was really different was that this pair has a garter stitch heel flap. Typically your heel flap is like a stuck knit or like a slip stitch. So I never done a garter stitch heel flap. Very different, very stretchy. I don't know how strong it's gonna be like when I actually wear the socks. Right now it's like 109 out, so I'm not wearing socks right now. So I'll definitely see how it feels and how strong it feels over the winter as I'm wearing all my wool socks. But at one point I thought about taking it apart because it just seemed really stretchy. But I decided to leave it because I won't be wearing these every day. I have a lot of hand knit socks. So these will get worn once or twice and then get put away, and then I'll wear something else. So we'll see how that looks. But it looks really interesting. It looks really fun. So we'll see how that actually wears through this winter. So that was my first one. And then I have my July socks and my spring fling socks. Those were both for Sock Week. So like I said, it's hosted by Knitty Natty. And the whole idea is that you have 1 week to knit 1 sock. And then if you want to knit more, you can. So it originally started with Shark Week. And you would knit a sock during Shark Week. However, they don't announce the dates for Shark Week until like pretty close to Shark Week, as I understand it. So it's just become its own thing. So I had seen it on the internet last year, but this is my first year participating, and it's been so much fun. So I ended up knitting 3 socks in 5 days. I still have a couple days left. So I'm trying for my 4th sock. So we'll see if I get it done by tomorrow to complete Sock Week. But my July socks are from Pasley Knits for her Yarn Club for the Gods. That was from last year. I got the last of my colorways from that. It was a pre-order. I don't know if she'll have any leftovers, but I'm missing 2 colors. So this was the July colorway. This is called Athena, and I just love this like olive greens, a little bit of cream, but it's mostly green. It's just very subtle, very beautiful. So I wanted something with high texture, and I had this pattern. It's called Little Black Socks by Summer Lee Knits, and I've had it for a while, and just hadn't found the right yarn to go with it, and this just seemed like a perfect fit. The yarn doesn't have a ton of contrast in it, so the cables really pop through, and I am so proud to say that I did not mess up the cables. I've done cables before, in a couple different projects, and there's always like that one where I did the cable the wrong way, and I was very adamant that I was not going to do that for these socks, and I was able to do all the cables in the right directions, so that was great. But really fun knit. This pattern originally has the heel as an afterthought heel, so you knit a tube, you kind of put a marker of where you want your heel, and then you go back later and put it in. She also had an option for heel flap and gusset, and there were just a little bit of rearranging of stitches to get that done so that the cables would be more towards the front. And you guys know me, I love a heel flap and gusset, so that's the route I went with. Super fun knit, great if you are familiar with cables but you're ready to kind of step up a little bit. Very easy to follow pattern, so definitely recommend this one. And then my other pair of socks that I did, pair of socks. Anyways, the two socks that I did for Sock Week were the Spring Fling socks by Nomadic Yarns. So Drew of With Scarlet, she's cranked out some tubes for me in the past. She was doing some destash. I think she was pregnant at the time. She was going to have the baby. I don't know if she's had the baby yet or not. But anyway, she was destashing, and I was happy to oblige and take a couple of those skeins from her. So I had bought already the yarn advent for Christmas time from Nomadic Yarns, but I never actually worked with her fibers. So this seemed like a great chance to kind of work with it, be familiar with it before December. And this was such a great yarn to work with. It's very plump, so like really nice round squishy feel, but still feels very strong. I don't remember what the yarn content is. I want to say it was like an 80-20. But anyways, really fun. I did a rib sock, cuff down, and for this one I did do an afterthought heel. Because it is a self-striping yarn, I don't like to break up the stripes. So for that I will do usually a rib, so I have some more stretch, and then I do an afterthought heel. So those went by super fast, definitely a lot faster than my cable socks, because I didn't have to like look at my hands while I was knitting. I could just knit and go. So wonderful to work on those. So glad those are done. As far as whips, works in progress, I have one. Every year I do summer sock camp. I like obsessively knit socks, and then I don't want to see another sock again for like a month. And so I kind of stop all other projects so I can just knit socks. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, but I'm doing kind of one pair at a time versus like starting 3 different ones. So let me grab the ones that I started. I started these yesterday. This was from my Fibre Friends sock swap that I hosted at the beginning of the summer, and my partner, in just chatting with her and things we like and whatnot, we're both moms of young kids, and I mentioned that one of my favorite snacks is M&Ms because I don't feel like my hands are sticky. I can eat them while I'm knitting. I don't necessarily have to share them. So she picked out yarn from the Perfect Stitch Co. And I had not worked with this dyer before, but she picked out a yarn called Birdie Bots, and it's on the Chief base, 437 yards, 100 grams, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and it looks so fun. So like I said, it's called Birdie Bots, which if you're familiar with the Harry Potter books, that's like a jelly bean candy, but she said this reminded her of M&Ms, and I completely agree. To me, this looks like vanilla ice cream or like vanilla frozen yogurt when you put M&Ms in and you mix it up. That's what it reminds me of. And then it comes with this, hold on, let me find it. Here it is. This little brown mini. So we talked about cookies, and I love chocolate chip cookies, so she picked this out for me. And I just love how intentional she was in picking out a yarn in just things that I enjoyed. So I've been waiting all summer to cast these on, finally got to put them on the needles, and I am so happy with how they're turning out. So this is the Lunette Socks by Pip and Pin. That's Megan Nodecker. And it's kind of like a broken rib. Like a broken rib. I don't know how to explain it, but I love the texture and the stretch. This yarn feels really thin, so this feels more like a light fingering than like a true fingering weight. So even though it was close to 60 rounds like I typically do, the leg does seem really short. However, the pattern says to knit until you have 5 inches from the cast on to the leg. So this is a little over 5 inches. So I'm still following the pattern, but it just seems a lot shorter than what I typically do. And that's fine. I'm trying to knit a whole sock in 2 days, so I'm not gonna nitpick it. But anyways, I cast it on yesterday, got most of the leg done last night. I am taking a page out of Bethany of Woolberry's book, literally, and I've been reading over the last 2 nights while knitting, and it's just been so fun to just kind of pick projects that don't need a lot of attention. The first night I was working on cables and trying to read at the same time, and I did not get as much done, either reading or knitting. But with this, I was just able to just not focus on it and just really focus on the book. So I got a ton done. So just got the heel flap done this afternoon, and I'm just gonna keep going, and hopefully I can finish this by tomorrow. So this would count as summer sock camp, sock week if I can finish it by tomorrow, and then this counts double for the Pip and Pin knit along. And I will have information about summer sock camp and the Pip and Pin 6-week sock knit along in the description below. By this time this video comes out, sock week will be over. But if you want to join us for next year, definitely keep an eye out on Natalie's Instagram and her podcast, because she announces it there. So, hold on, let me check my notes. Like I said, there's so much we have to cover, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. Okay, I talked about finished objects, whips, knit-alongs, giveaway. I was supposed to announce a giveaway at the beginning of the month. Specifically our giveaway winner, Brittany, congratulations, you won our giveaway. If you can email me at pearlsandpolishpodcast@gmail.com, link is in the below, and let me know that you won and send me your mailing address. I will get your prize out. And congratulations. Just as a disclaimer, I'm never gonna ask for money. I'm never gonna ask for your social security number. None of that. Don't send me money, please. So, there are always people just trying to take advantage of other people, and that's not cool. So, Brittany, congratulations. And that was in celebration of having 200 subscribers to the channel. So, yay. As far as knitting, that's kind of it. So, like I said, I'm going to focus on socks specifically for the rest of the summer. I do have a cowl that I'm working on, my garter snake cowl that I'm on kind of the last half of it. So that will get some work during the week. And then I ended up taking apart my Soho top. I tried it on and I had way too much positive ease. It just kind of looked balloony. So I keep going back and forth of whether or not I just go down a size or 2 and just start over, or if I just use that yarn for something else. I'm not really in a mood to knit garments right now, so my heart really isn't in it, so I will probably wait until the end of the summer and then make some decisions about that. In this part of California, it is still pretty hot in September and sometimes going into October, so it's not gonna be a big deal. So let's go to what I'm reading and what I'm watching. Kind of in a show slump up until recently. I was just kind of rewatching things and just kind of bouncing around. But I started this show on HBO, and it's called Warrior. Now, it's HBO, so take that with multiple grains of salt. If HBO is not your cup of tea, don't watch this. Definitely not kid appropriate at all. But the whole premise is Chinatown in San Francisco in the 1800s, where lots of immigrant Chinese are coming to California looking for work, and just the attitude that's given towards them in San Francisco from Americans, from the Irish, the working man, the upper class amongst themselves. And what I've really enjoyed is that all the actors identify with this movie, either culturally or, just there's a lot of tie-in as far as like the actors' personal lives and this show. All the actors who do martial arts are trained martial artists. My kids are learning Taekwondo, so it's really fun to see someone who has spent many years training as a martial artist and then see at this level what they can do. And kind of pick out like, oh, I know that move, I know how to do that. I don't actually know how to do it. I know how my kids are supposed to be doing it. So I help them while they're practicing. And then a lot of the places that they talk about in this show are actual places. Like at one point they go to Grass Valley. That's just up the hill. So geographically I know the area. Historically I'm familiar with just stuff that was going on in California at that time. So there's just a lot of connection that I know in this show. So really enjoyed it. Also, it was based off of ideas that Bruce Lee had put together before he had passed away. So his daughter is one of the producers on the show. So that's also pretty fun. So anyways, I've been watching that, really enjoying it. And then books that I'm reading. I have entered into my book club phase of life, and I'm pretty excited about it. So first off, I restarted the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. You guys know I really enjoy Naomi Novik's writing. This is a series I've read before. Some of the earlier books I've read multiple times. The later books I've only read once or twice. I think there's like 8 or 9 books in the series. It's historical fiction, and the idea is that it's the Napoleonic Wars, except there are dragons. So these dragons fight and they talk, and it's really interesting in that the dragons have almost like a childlike understanding of the world, but they are very, very smart. So they can understand higher level calculus. But when you try to explain like, hey, you can't just take things, those belong to people, they kind of struggle with that. So really fun series, really well thought out. So I'm on book 4. It's called something about ivory. Anyways, they go all over the world. They start in England, they go to France, they go to China, they go throughout the continent of Africa, they end up in Australia, and then I think either Korea or Japan, then they end up in Latin America. So they are all over. And just some very real historical moments. So I think she did a great job tying in both the history and the fantasy. So definitely check that series out. And then for like my book club books, where some of our friends from church do a book club, and the book for this session was Emma, which by Jane Austen, which our dog is named Emma after this character. So we got invited to join in. We listened to Emma in the car on our way to and from Pacific Grove, and I just love that book. The most recent Amazon video rendition of Emma I think is wonderful. I think it's one of the better ones, in just showing just how awful Emma is. So I'm really excited to meet with friends and talk about that book. And then the other book I'm reading for book club is Devil in the White City. And I had read this book before having kids. So I got invited to join in and read and then discuss this book. So the whole premise is looking at the World's Fair that was hosted in Chicago. And so kind of how they got the fair there, how they're building it, all the different issues they're having. And then at the same time, there was a serial killer in Chicago, right, like down the street from the fair, and how he came to the city and all the things that he was doing. So it is crazy. So the devil being the serial killer, the White City was the name of the exposition halls. So great book. You kind of forget that, oh wait, this is a historical book. Like this actually happened. This is not made up. Because some of the stuff is just crazy. So that was what I've been reading on my Kindle while I'm knitting. So really enjoying that. If I've got nothing else, that's all I got. So thanks for hanging in there with me. I know this was a little longer than typical. The setup, so many things are different. The setup is different. But I'm hoping we'll get back to kind of our regular schedule, regular backgrounds for the next video. So have a great day. I hope your day is wonderful. I will see you guys soon, and find ways to be kind. Thanks for joining me.